Continue.
Okay. Is something about this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel like age is opposite to the capacity of action? Like, at young age, you can do a lot, but you're not very smart, I guess. With age, you can get smarter, hopefully, wiser. You can't do a lot. Is that the balance that we're talking about?
I'm really not quite sure how to answer that question. I'm not quite sure if the problem of age as you get older and lose abilities, if there is a stage where things will balance themselves out or life will help you, or as you say, the universe.
Sorry, helicopters are a pile of rocks this time.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right now? Right over there.
They're working on the roof.
Don't stand on it.
You know, the answer to most questions really depends on how reflective you are, how observant you are of things, of your own life especially, of the things that you have invested in. And perhaps you really never got paid for all of your investments, which causes a good amount of loss of time, of youth, of vigor. And then there is, of course, the grieving period, which can leave most often, you can become very bitter. You know, consider the following story that comes from one of the Gospels. It's about a farmer who's walking, has a bag of seeds. What he doesn't know, or perhaps he knows, is that the bag has a hole in it, and as walking, the seeds fall on the ground. And some fall on wood, some fall on cement, some fall on hard ground, some fall on soft ground. The function of a farmer, I guess if you wanted to go into the profession of farming, your task is really quite simple, which is find a relatively decent property that has good soil, depending on what it is that you want to grow. You plant these seeds, you make sure there is irrigation, you make sure that the soil is tilled, that the soil is relatively healthy, it has had time to recuperate. And then you plant, and you tend to your garden. You make sure that there are no weeds, no vultures, no one steps on them, you know. So that is what it means to be a farmer. You have a profession, you care for your profession. Seeds are all about potential. It doesn't mean that they'll come true. You know, it's kind of like you read a book. What does a book do? Depending on the sort of book that you're reading. Let's say this morning you wake up and you're hungry for some magic in your life because your life has been so dreadful. And so you read perhaps Harry Potter. Or perhaps you watch the movie Harry Potter. Or maybe you've never had a hero in your life, so you watch the Spider-Man trilogy. Or maybe Born Identity. You're doing all of that so that some sort of a seed can go inside you. They can be, you know, a source of inspiration for you. So almost everything that we do in life, really, we do so because somewhere deep down we're looking for some seed to go inside us, to blossom, to create some shade, because life is tough. It can be a source of comfort. It can be nourishing in some sort of way. So that's what seeds do. Now, just because you have a seed and just because you have a moment of inspiration, there is no guarantee it's going to last. And so imagine now you're a farmer, and what you have is a bag of potential. And like any farmer, like any person who is invested in any task, you wake up in the morning with hopes and dreams and fantasies. Today I'm going to wake up in the morning and make my kids breakfast. Hopefully they'll say thank you. Tonight I'll go home and make food for my husband or my wife, and hopefully we can sit and eat food together instead of him or her going to the TV. Okay? So life can't exist without seeds. It's impossible. Without seeds or without hope, what you encounter is depression, self-loathing. It can be a profoundly miserable life. You have a novice farmer. And by novice, I mean the farmer doesn't know the difference between wood, concrete, good ground, hard ground. A novice farmer doesn't know how to protect what he or she plants. He or she basically assumes that once he or she throws some seeds around, eventually they'll stick, and after a few years or a few months or a few weeks or a few days, it'll sprout. That is what a novice farmer does. So, and because he or she can't discriminate, because lack of experience, lack of information, knowledge, wisdom, insight, the seeds for the most part go to waste. The truth is, you can't make anything grow on wood. When you throw seeds at it, you can't grow anything when it's concrete. You can't grow anything when it falls on hard ground. And the truth is, you can't even grow anything. Good morning. You can't even grow anything when it falls into good ground, but it's not cared for. Okay? Now imagine you're a young farmer and you have all these fantasies in your head. So every morning you wake up and you have this huge bag of seeds. Okay? And you never imagine it's going to become empty. You assume that until the day you die, this bag will always have seeds in it. So you go around very casually, carelessly, and you just throw these seeds around. Okay. Once in a while, you have a tendency of going back and seeing, the places you planted these seeds, if anything is growing. Well, it takes time to go back and examine what you've planted and on what exactly and what has really grown. So, and it takes time, it takes energy, it takes your youth, it takes your life, and you go back. You don't find anything growing on, wood, and you don't find anything growing on hard ground. You find sprouts on good ground, but because of the birds, vultures, people stepping on it, just the busyness of life, nothing stays. I mean, imagine if someone in this class was to say something interesting. That's a seed, it goes inside you, and the way it functions is first you feel about it, then you think about it, you mull over it, And as you reflect on the seed planted, and let's just say an idea that goes inside you, as you entertain it, play with it, spend time with it, the relationship grows between you and the idea that went inside you. But, your life is very vulturous. You have a class after this. Let's just say it's math. And then you have to go home and take care of your kid brother. And then, you have a physical body. It has limitations. At 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, you're overcome with tiredness and you just take a nap. And you wake up in a pissy mood. And you don't really know what to do with yourself. The ideas are gone from this class or any other class. And you realize that even if you plant your seed in a good ground that has the potential to take care of the seed, the truth is it needs more caring. And so, and if you consider life to be a business of continuous distraction, life is there for only one reason: to steal anything that's good from you. It takes your innocence, it takes your reflective abilities, it exhausts you. You need to make money, you need to be good to people because you need them in your life. And there are moments where you want to raise your hand and say, this class sucks, but out of the fear for the grade, you keep your mouth shut. And there goes a little bit more of your integrity, your honesty, your decency about yourself, not so much me or the class. And before you know it, there is nothing about you that's left. You know, it's kind of like the story of the knight in the rusty armor. You know, there comes a point where you're nothing but rust. You know, you can't do anything. No doors will open. They're just tight shut or shut tight. There comes a point, I suppose, in the farmer's life where he or she sits and says, okay, you know, for the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years, I've been walking around planting seeds into various different sorts of grounds. I want to kind of figure out why. You know, let me go and see the fruits of my labor. And it's a very serious stage to be in. You know, because you're no longer 20. You can't walk casually. You can't just throw your seeds around casually. You're a bit more serious. You're a bit more reflective. And it's just something that happens to all of us. You know, if you happen to be very, very lucky, it happens at a very young age, about the good things of life. That you don't really have very many traumas in your life. You take some class and it forces you to reflect. And then that changes the course of your life. And then you major in math and you become a PhD in math and you teach at a good school. Okay. Most of us are not as lucky. We are forced into reflection because of some event that took place in our lives and we don't really know why or how or when or who. And we find that the person who did this to us is, as Grace would say, was a predator of sorts, villainous of sorts, and it's going to take us 20, 30 years to figure things out. Okay. By the time this farmer begins to seriously examine and reflect what he has been doing, you know, for many, many, many decades, he's no longer 20 or 30 or 40, he's 50 or 60. You spent all this time planting, you know, putting the seed on hard ground. For what? Even if it was a good ground, you know, you didn't care for it. Or maybe you did want to care for it, but, you know, the ground didn't let you. The ground had a life that was far too busy. Maybe I like you, Marcos. Maybe I have this feeling that you like these ideas. And maybe I'll invite you to the office. And then you'll open your mouth and you tell me about your life. You know, your mom, and then your dad, and then your brother, and then your sister, and then drugs, and then this, and then that. I'm saying, you know, I like Marcos. He's a really, really nice guy. He's got potential. But the truth is, these ideas are not going to last. You know, I can only provide some shade for him in this office from 9 to maybe 9:30, a class afterwards from 9:30 to 10:45. But he's got another 23 hours to go. And I'm not going to be there. I can't be there. I'm far too old. I'm far too exhausted. And I don't really care. And though you may have potential, that potential needs tending. And without the right people in your life, it'll just go to waste. It'll be crushed. And so if your question is there a point to the farmer's life where the universe will balance things out? The only balancing act that the farmer hopefully will experience is they just come to accept. Manny Pacquiao is a 45-year-old man. He's still in the boxing ring. Floyd Mayweather. All these great boxers, great athletes, who walk back into life only to realize that ordinary life has nothing to offer them. So they go back to the profession, only to realize they no longer have the abilities. You know, if you remember Michael Jordan, for example, he just couldn't play the way he used to after his retirement. Tiger Woods, Muhammad Ali, Larry Holmes. None of these people can go back being the person that they once were. And once you begin to realize you have lost your abilities, you're going to become very, very angry for all the times that you have wasted planting things, or at least trying to plant things in wood, cement, hard ground. And because you were a novice, you assume that just because a ground is ready, it'll also have the capacity, the ability to protect what's been planted in it. And the truth is, none of those things are true. You just hope that the farmer near the end of his or her life comes to say, you know what? Okay, I made a lot of mistakes. I'll be careful. The problem with gaining that insight as a farmer now is the following. When you're young, all platforms are a possibility because you just don't know any better. You know, ask any one of us in this room when you were 18. Anyone, anything that walks, they're a potential date. As you get, and when you're young, you have a huge circle of people you call friends. As you age and as you gain more experiences, and as life has pushed you into places that are dark and problematic, like Job, you gain some insights and wisdom. And you realize now you're 40 or maybe 50, maybe 60, and you want to plant your seeds somewhere. You want to create some intimacy. You want to share your ideas. You want to lay next to someone. You want to go out and have a cup of coffee with someone. But you're no longer looking for wood. And you know what a wood looks like and feels like. You're no longer looking to be around someone who's like concrete. Someone whose life is so busy that you can only occupy a tiny little space inside them. And once you're gone, you're completely forgotten. And that's one of the problems of gaining insight and experiences, which is near the end, you really don't have very many friends. You know too much. Now, if you've been trained in this particular art, living a solitary life is really, 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 really good. And if you want to know a little bit about how it feels to have a solitary life, my recommendation would be don't delve too much into this. If you know, there is a guy whose name is Ludwig Wittgenstein. He was a complete mess, you know, as a human being. He was a great thinker. He had millions, or if his father gave him millions and millions and millions of dollars. He invested his money in America and he became even more rich. This was after his father had died. But he wanted to be a monk. He wanted to live a solitary life. He had no friends, he didn't want any friends because he could think. That was his companion. You know, he would wake up, all of a sudden have a thought of sorts, and then he would sit and write for hours. Of course, he had cancer near the end of his life, and he lived with friends until, you know, he passed. But the point I'm trying to make is, if you can find, you know, your own ideas, your own interior to be profoundly rich, you don't really need very many friends. You don't really need very many people in your circle. But most of us are not that lucky. So there is no balance to be had, except perhaps the last breath, where you say, okay, it's time to die.
So, as you brought earlier as well, and near the end as well, acceptance is like, by just learning to accept that the way things are is just how life is. It's fair, it's unbiased.
Look, acceptance is the very last stage of your growth and maturity. You know, you have to go through a lot of struggles to come to a place of acceptance. The first question you need to ask is, why must you accept? Let's just say you signed up for this class and you were really, really excited and inspired to be in the class. Okay? So that's the first seed that's planted inside you. You look at the schedule, it says Humanities 30A, ethics. I will know how to think well and behave well. Let's just say, okay? So you have the seed of hope. which creates all sorts of beautiful stories. You come to this class. I'm not very exciting. You have been deceived, not only by your own intellect, because you thought that what lives on paper can actually be true in the classroom. Okay. So you're going to feel disappointment. You're going to feel boredom. You're going to feel frustrated. You're going to be anxious. You're going to keep looking at the clock. And you're going to be in conflict. Should I stay in this class? Should I drop this class? Then you will go home, look at the schedule to see if there are other classes available. And you have to go through all the stuff. You have to sit and do the essays if you want to pass this class. And you need this class. It's a required course. Okay? And you have to struggle. And you're not going to accept the struggle. You're going to rebel against it. You're going to gossip about this class to your mom, to your dad, to your friends, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, platform you're on. And I'm not quite sure how it's going to happen for you. Maybe the second week into the class, in the semester, maybe never. Where you say, okay, well, this is life. Amir as an instructor is really quite awful. I didn't learn anything. I came excited. I'm leaving depressed. There is nothing exciting about the ideas shared in the class. And you realize that by the time you get to the acceptance, you have to go through a good amount of ordeal, negative. And it's wrong of you to say, okay, when am I going to accept my life? You're not. Acceptance is the last fruit. Before you get there, you have to taste some bitter fruits. It'd be nice if there was a how-to, but I don't think there is. You could have moments where you wake up and you say, I accept my dad the way he is. He's a crummy human being, he's an alcoholic, an addict of sorts. That's the way things are. But that moment of inspiration will last only for 10 minutes. Please.
I'm gonna ask it. It was,
Before I forget,
okay.
there's a guy who came onto the scene in the, I think, early 1900s. I'm sorry, 20th century. His name is Idris Shah. Idries. Shah. Shah. He has about, 30, 40, 50 books out there. And all of them are connected and related to the Sufi tradition. I'm not sure which branch of Sufism he was connected to, and I don't think that's very important. I think once you become a very autonomous thinker, you can't really connect yourself or relate to yourself with any of the traditions existing. You're just your own person. But if you want to become a bit more familiar about the Sufi tradition, it'll be a good read. If you want to kind of know, he probably comes from more of an intellectual tradition, a more practical tradition. It's a book we've talked about a few times in this class, Daughter of Fire. So, yeah, go ahead.
It was a question that I thought of after weeks ago when we were talking about Dante on House Love. There was one part of the story where God tells Dante to not allow himself to be human in order to, I can't remember exactly what. But I was thinking about this idea of like, how can one get different types of wisdom by separating it from this like physical immediate?
Can you do this again?
No. I wish I could read my email. Well, I'm trying to think of a different question.
It's okay, we have an hour. I have nothing to say, so you can keep trying until we just get tired and move on. I'm just joking, of course.
Okay, here's another question.
Sure.
Coming, that's a little bit different. Is art a corruption of life, like all humans are corrupt of life? Or is it, or can it be an attempt to reconcile corruption?
Like that.
Okay, cool. Sorry.
I'm not quite sure what has happened to the rap music, but I'm sure that its genesis, when it started, it had to do a lot with justice, inequality, certain groups of people not having a fair chance in life. So it had a very strong message, and let's just say you were just having a bad day because your teacher looked at you very strangely and you knew what it was all about. But the fear of raising your hand and telling it to your instructor was just a bit too much, so it imprisoned you. And the class ended, you would go to the parking lot, get in your car, and put on the tape cassette. And there is Tupac Shakur, saying a few things about injustice. And you kind of find the lyrics and the music very comforting, that now you're being understood, not so much by your classmates, not so much by your instructor, but someone who's been shot dead. But he still has the magic, he still has the power to console you, to comfort you. And the moment something becomes fashionable, in the 1980s, what was his name? Diane Sawyer was interviewing this rap artist, this musician, and he said, I don't really care if my lyrics are filled with profanities. I'm just here to make money. There are a couple of things about the world of art and the artist, which is true of all human beings, the most corrupt to the most profound. Can I tell you a story that I think Jean-Paul Sartre told the story, but I'm not quite sure, I may be wrong. It's about a man who meets a woman, he's enamored by her, falls in love with her, and after a few weeks invites her to his house and cleans the house, cooks the best dinner he can. And things get heated up a little. And he asks her if she's willing or she wants to go to the bedroom, and she says yes. And there he looks at her and confesses that he's in love with her. And she looks at him and says, I love you too. Now, the thing with confessing that you love someone without the physical intimacy is that it's abstract. You could even say it's spiritual. That you don't love her for her body, you don't love her because of the sex. There is something mysterious, you don't even know what it is. All you know is that you love her. And then as the both of you are in the bedroom and both of you are getting undressed, something very strange happens to you. The human element, the human part of you comes into play. And you realize now you're interested in her physical body, and the way you handle her physical body. And Sartre says, imagine for a moment as a woman, or even as a man, if you feel like you're being had for all the wrong reasons, you look at your companion and you say, what are you doing? And the question comes as a shock. to your companion because there are two episodes, pre-sex and then the sexual aspect. The pre-sex is they look at you and they say, I love you. And they love the intangible parts. Maybe they love your mind, maybe they love your soul, who the hell knows? The second aspect of it is they're really just focused on your flesh. And perhaps as a woman, or maybe even as a man, you're going to feel offended, insulted. Why someone who confessed his or her love for you, for your intellect, for your soul, all of a sudden is so focused on your thighs and your buttocks and your this and your that, you know. But to be fair, I think anything that is abstract will eventually desire to bring itself down. I think if you love someone, eventually you want to see that love in a very physical way. Yeah, so in that sense, Sartre is wrong, you know. And the point I'm trying to make is this. Artists have a tendency artists of any kind, whether you're a spiritual artist, whether you're Snoop Dogg, it doesn't really matter, okay? You have moments of inspiration. Where inspiration comes from, I don't really know. All I know is that the more proficient you are in your craft, the more moments of inspiration will be given to you. It just goes with the territory. It is true that as an artist you can create beautiful works of art. It is also true that you're going to go home and you're going to worry about rent. You're going to worry about people's judgments upon you and your work. It is true that, like any other human being, you desire fame and fortune. And so is it true that by your own hand you begin to corrupt moments of inspiration? You're no longer creating just to create, you create for the money? The answer is yes. Must you accept both parts of the artist? The answer is yes. Our problem is we have this deep-needed desire for perfection. Deep down, there is something about us that says, hate what is human, love what is divine. These two worlds should never intertwine. They should never mix. And the truth is, it's not possible. You know, you can't fall in love with someone and ask them to remain celibate. Ask them to never look at you as a sexual object. It's unfair. You know, because you're not dealing with Jesus Christ and you're not dealing with the Buddha. You're dealing with just commoners, people who are walking and quacking on a daily basis.
Is what you were saying about Sartre related to the gays? Or is that a little...
It could be that here you are sitting, you know, having a beautiful moment with your own reflections, and all of a sudden a duck begins to quack, and Sartre would argue, well, the duck is stealing you from you, because for the past 2 hours you were sitting and reflecting. It was your ideas, your thoughts, your emotions. You had a great time with yourself, by yourself. And all of a sudden the duck comes by and steals that. You know, yeah. And maybe that's the reason why you have in the Gospels, you know, if you were blind, you would be without sin. Because you can't see anything. If you can't see, you can't feel. If you can't feel, you can't think. And if you can't feel or think, you can't entertain anything that's out there.
You said that the most proficient you become with something, the more inspiration you will be given or you have. Why am I not sure about that?
Well, let me be arrogant enough to say it in this way. Forgive me. I haven't prepared for a class, any of my classes, for the past 29 years almost. I don't read before coming to class. I don't say to myself, okay, what am I going to talk about when I get to class? All I know is that, you know, I walk to class, people ask questions, and 90% of the time, it's relatively okay. There are those 10% moments where everything just falls flat. I can't move intellectually. Just everything's dead. You know, I remember I had this interview at De Anza College. This is almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago. And I don't know if any of you in this class have been to De Anza College. It's a beautiful campus. It's one of those episodes I bring to the surface of my mind once in a while, every time I get tired of Laney and how dirty it looks, everything. De Anza is a very rich campus, beautiful buildings. Students come from relatively decent backgrounds. You know, I'm sure they have their own set of issues. So my first interview at De Anza, it was on a Saturday, 4 to 5. And it went all the way till about 7 o'clock. And when I went to the car, I lived in Roseville. I remember one of the committees chasing me saying, you know, you're going to get a second interview, right? And this is not something you're supposed to do. And I get home around like 9, and there's a message on my answering machine. That's what they have way back then. Hello.
I remember.
You know, and message is, thank you. We've chosen you as, you know, the second candidate for the full-time position. And I go there on a Monday. I sit in the quad. It's a zoo. Campus is busy. One of the committee members comes forward and says, you know, we're going to meet with the president, the VP, and all the committee members you've already met. The job is yours. I go in there, and I had an awful week. And by awful, I mean, for some strange reason, I just was very introverted. I couldn't come out. So when I went to the meeting, and it was supposed to last for about an hour and 10, 15 minutes, it was done in 10 minutes. And I had no idea why. And I had no idea why I couldn't answer any of the questions. So, and that's what I mean by moments where you just fall flat.